Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. Yes, as we're sitting here looking at the world, how do we deal with stormwater and groundwater? It's becoming a real issue, and at the same time that we're at times having major floods, also we're having great droughts. And the gentleman sitting right beside me has actually been working on this issue for a number of years. This is Rod Simmons. He's the conservation ecologist and biologist with the Virginia Native Plant Society, Potomac chapter. And Rod, welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about the mission and vision of Virginia Native Plant Society, and why is it called that?
Statewide organization, conservation organization, started in 1982, founded in 1982. It covers the entire state, but it also has a number of chapters that for different geographic regions of the state. Mm-hmm. And it's a conservation advocacy and education and volunteer organization to protect and inform folks of the native the wild flora and their habitats in Virginia.
Now, why is it so important that we have a focus now in the 21st century on native plants? Because, you know, going back to the early days of the colonial powers, we're bringing things from all over the world, thought that was absolutely fantastic. Now we're realizing that maybe we need to go back to native species. Why is that?
That's a good question. The native species are the foundation of our ecosystems, wherever they are. And native plants are the dominant natural resource on most lands globally, but certainly in the Mid-Atlantic and Virginia. And it supports basically all the higher life.
Looking at streams and wetlands, how would we define streams? How we define wetlands? Because we're hearing it more and more, even major news sources are talking about these two water bodies. Why are they so critically important? One, for native species, and secondly, to handle stormwater and to mitigate drought.
Well, they're vitally important for water quality and which is our drinking water, but also it supports life. There are many different kinds of streams, as there are many different kinds of wetlands, and they're all interrelated and part of the hydrologic cycle on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at having these streams and the wetlands, these are part of best practices. Mm-hmm. So how would we define the streams and the wetlands as best practices, and why are we applying that? Because in the old days, we're trying to get rid of all these. I mean, we'd actually plow them under, mm-hmm. put in tile, anything to remove it. Now we're trying to put them all back. Why the change?
Well, as you've said, we approached all this from a very egocentric, human-centric viewpoint and vantage that the wetlands and the ground is there and the earth is there to serve us, but we're finding that we've had ecological collapse of many of our systems, the waterways, one of the most prominent ones. We've lost most of the wetlands since European occupation of this nation, mm-hmm. and and we've degraded many of them, and we're getting into a situation where they're just not sustainable.
I see. Now, looking at biodiversity and going back to this term sustainability, also we want to add resilience to that. A lot of these waterways were highly processed, is the term. You know, they were plowed, widened, bulldozed, covered. I mean, just numerous ways to either get rid of them or cover them over or something like that. Now we're going back to those. So, but we're seeing that biodiversity is actually helping to bring these back naturally. Why is that? Why and how is that possible?
Well, that's a good dichotomy there. What you described is a situation you find in areas that were heavily modified, like let's say the Midwest, where we remove the prairie and the grasslands we put in, put for the farms and such, where we altered the streams and the course. In the eastern United States, and specifically in the Mid-Atlantic, the vegetation is the eastern deciduous forest, and so what we see even in large areas like metropolitan areas like the DC area or Baltimore, Philadelphia, wherever, are huge tracts of original native forests that are still intact to some good extent. They weren't necessarily farmed, and a lot of the streams that were or removed, a lot of the streams that we're discussing here in focus are these ones that are the upper headwater streams that emerge as springs and seeps, and those are the ones that are relatively intact still, but they're also the ones that are being altered again in a different way.
In other words, they're actually being altered back to a more normal state or what they were in their originally?
They're naturally a remnant. These things come from a point long ago in the past. They weren't something else, and then they became a healthy stream, and then now they're being changed. They're still highly functioning native ecosystems. However, they're very attractive now for a lot of government agencies, jurisdictions to completely alter them and change them into something that they never were, in geologic time.
Right.
And so, and then we lose the native biodiversity with that wholesale fashion.
Yeah. Losing the native biodiversity, we have this photograph here of the turtle. Tell us about the turtle, why it's so important, and what is it representing to us in a modern day time?
That's a great example of a native animal that depends on those small upper headwater streams for its survival. That's the eastern box turtle, and its numbers are declining greatly throughout the eastern U.S. And it stays the first 10 or so years of its life along those small headwater streams because it is an intact habitat and system, and
so it's a real ecosystem in itself.
It is, and it stays there for protection as well because it really can't fend for itself as well in the open, in the forest community, the general forest.
I see. Now, looking at we have another turtle here. Tell us the difference of that, and also how this is aiding and supporting biodiversity.
Well, a best practice for stream restoration projects, they're construction projects basically, is to avoid ones that would remove things like the turtle that we just saw, and the salamanders and the snakes and all the other life forms that can't escape a bulldozer, and so. When one just scoops that out, it's just gone forever, and it doesn't come back because it's taken many thousands of years and beyond for those complex interactions and life associations to occur. And
let's stay on this turtle right here. You're talking about thousands of years to evolve into this balance that it has. You know, the animals, with the various plants. But also, you know, we have the aerobic, anaerobic bacteria in the soil. All three of these interact with each other.
They do.
So how does this turtle, as an example, help to mix, mingle, and to enhance that biodiversity as far as the plants, the creatures, you know, in the earth, and as the ones above earth?
That's a good, another great example of the interrelationship between plants and animals. We and they co-evolved over many millions of years, and to where their life histories are conjoined. The example of the turtle is one that that helps plant the forest in the eastern deciduous forest by one of its preferred foods is the mayapple with the fig-like fruit that is produced in late spring.
Right.
Soil microorganisms extremely important. Without them, you wouldn't have a forest. That's what supports the forest through drought, through all other environmental stressors, atmospheric stressors. There's the soil microorganisms that work with the roots of the trees and the plants to sustain the forest, and when that is altered or disturbed in a serious way, you don't get that back either.
Yeah, and the whole thing about this, we don't realize the complexity of this. Looking at the plants that we have before us with the flowers, the trees, the water in the background, we know that there's literally billions, maybe even trillions microorganisms in the ground. So how is all this being brought back now in the 21st century from 400 years of over-harvesting, human tampering, and fires, floods, and all that? How are we bringing that back?
I wish we were for the small order streams and that are in forested parcels that are getting all the attention. The recent Washington Post article on this. For the large order streams, we have a much better chance and much better success of doing that. The small order interior forested streams, the seepage streams, the headwater streams, we can't. They're just not an equal trade for what we can do if we remove the material. It's just forever lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful to see the plants and animals in these photographs you have are absolutely stunning. So in the time we have left, we just have about 30 seconds, Rod. What do you see for the growth and development as far as the Virginia Native Plant Society Potomac chapter?
Well, to keep on going, invite folks to join us, certainly, and do a lot of field trips. We go out and see a lot of these places close up, hands-on, and by all means, come out and join us. We want to keep a robust program going. Environmental education is so desperately needed, as you well know, in this day and age, and that probably is our best hope.
Okay, wonderful. Rod Simmons, a conservation ecologist, biologist, Virginia Native Plant Society Potomac chapter. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.